Stop doing ASMR in my ear. Hello.
Hi.
We've done it.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Kill Your Normie podcast.
Kill your normie. Hooray.
I want to set the scene for the listeners right now. I need people to know what the setup currently is. So we are on the floor of my bedroom, which is usually where these conversations tend to happen.
I'm right next to the trash can. Where all my opinions go.
Yes. So we're sitting on the floor. We've got a mic covered in my Sherlock blanket for soundproofing, and this will get more professional with time, folks. I just want y'all to know it'll get better, I promise. But we have to start somewhere. So welcome to the Kill Your Normie podcast. Why did we call it Kill Your Normie?
Ooh, I made the name. Okay, so basically, we've all got a normie in us. And the normie fucking sucks sometimes. Sometimes they're good, but most of the time they suck because it makes you think that you can't enjoy the things you like and you can't go deep on them. But we do like to go deep because, it is that deep and you're drowning. So basically, this is all about killing the normie inside of you, going deep on the things we like, and just shooting the shit about, the geekiest things we can think of.
That's pretty much
Yeah.
it. It's basically kill that voice inside of you that says your enthusiasm is lame or cringe.
Yes.
We're about killing the cringe here on Kill Your Normie podcast. So typically the format is gonna be so we'll hop on here. We're gonna plan on twice monthly episodes, about every 2 weeks. That will come out on Fridays. We're gonna call those Fandom Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely looking forward to those. We've got some great stuff planned, and we would normally start our episodes off with something we'd like to call headshots. It's a little take on like actor headshots, but also headshots you take.
Killing your normie.
Killing your normie.
Yeah.
Kill it in the head.
All the things that we get excited about over the past 2 weeks, we'll put them all here and we'll talk about those.
Yeah, exactly. So so each of us would probably present like a piece of news. In my case, if I had to pick a headshot for this week, as we are recording this on March 26th, the entire cast of Avengers Doomsday has been announced.
Yeah, you were texting me about it all day.
That was my entire day at work.
Just buzz my phone the entire day.
Do you have a headshot you'd like to share?
Oh, okay. So big exciting news in my neck of the woods. So I'm more of the gaming side of things than my sister is. We just got announced a Nintendo Direct's going to be happening from tomorrow. Technically, since it's coming out Friday, that would be Thursday. So technically yesterday. For me, it's tomorrow. And then a week later, we're getting the full Switch 2 Direct. So we're getting a double Direct in 2 weeks. In the period of 2 weeks.
Amazing.
I mean, yeah.
It's turned into a very quiet week to a very full week.
Yes.
So second of all, I think we should introduce ourselves and kind of like what we do. My name is Lindsey. I am an actress and a singer, and a video maker, things like that. I currently work, my regular job is in the regional theater space. Ren?
My name is Ren Taft. I am an artist, writer, fandom connoisseur, TV tropes user, all that kind of stuff. My general wheelhouse is animation, anime, gaming, all that kind of stuff. That's usually where my interests lie.
Yeah, mine tend to sit in the live action territory. So we love Marvel, Doctor Who, Supernatural, Sherlock. I was definitely a Super Who locker growing up.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely where my stuff lies. Love me a good television show, a good mystery, some sci-fi. We love that stuff. And also a big musical theater nerd because I work in theater.
But the one thing we can't agree on is Disney.
Yes, so this is why we decided to begin the podcast with
a travesty.
We're trying to be incredibly respectful and positive because,
yes.
Hey, a person made that.
Yeah.
That is also another thing we're trying to come at any kind of review or critique material at is from a position of, hey, people made that.
Yeah, people did make that.
So we don't ever want to come into something and just be a complete takedown piece. We
No,
never want to
yeah.
do that. Because we are both in the making business, and
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
the whole thing. So, yeah, I'd say let's jump right into it. So, first things first, you and I revisited the 1937 Snow White for
Yes.
the first time in a hot minute
For you. For you.
for me.
Because you haven't seen it since we were, like, kids.
Yeah, we had it on DVD when I was growing up. It was like a special edition. I remember
Yeah, it was a very thick one.
there were two discs
Yeah.
in there. And I think the last time I saw it was maybe before you destroyed it because you just
I was 3. I
you
was 3. And I
when
liked the movie, so I would suck on it. I would suck on the disc, and then I accidentally ruined it.
yeah, so I remember it would when it would get to the witch transformation, it
Mhm.
would start skipping and
Yeah.
like distorting. So, yeah, so we revisited the 1937 using Disney
Mhm.
Plus for the first time in a while.
I
And
will
yeah,
I will say that I recently rewatched the entire Disney animated canon with our father. So I have seen it more recently. Well, more recently before we rewatched it again.
yeah, so
Mhm.
we I was like I need to revisit like this one because it was one of the few Disney live actions that I didn't have super strong attachments to or
Mm.
memories of. It wasn't like a Little Mermaid or a Beauty and the Beast or
Mhm.
Aladdin or stuff like that.
Or a Lilo and Stitch.
Or like stuff that we had
Mhm.
history with
Yeah.
growing up. Snow White was not one we put on pretty often in the house.
Yes.
So I was like, if I'm gonna have strong opinions on this, I should probably know what the original looked like.
Mm.
So we watched the 1937, and then we watched the making of documentary that is also available on Disney Plus in the
Yes.
extras, to get a bit of
Mm.
background. So I thought we'd go over our thoughts on the 1937, kind of come into it with
Mm.
fresh eyes, and then we would go into the 2025. I thought that would be a little bit more comprehensive than like just
Going right into live action
yeah.
with no background.
So, Ren, you are our animation
Ooh.
nut. So I'll have you go first in terms of your thoughts.
So the thing about Snow White is that if you first watch it, because I had a tier list when I was doing the animated watch through, and while I love Snow White and I think it's a great film, it is dated of its time when it comes to pacing.
Hmm.
However, the animation itself is gorgeous. It is straight out of a storybook. It's a lot of rotoscoping. There is stylization, but the humans themselves, especially like the prince, the queen, and Snow White herself, are all very, very realistic. There's a little stylization there. Snow White gets a little Betty Boopish in the eyes sometimes.
I noticed that, yeah.
Um, but for the most part, it's a gorgeous film. Like you could screenshot any single one of them, put that in the storybook, and you would just it would just be ugh. It's just a gorgeous film. And thing is, the reason it looks like that is because they did actually get storybook artists to work on Snow White, doing a lot of the concept art. They were some of the original concept artists in Hollywood working on Snow White at the time. And the aesthetics are very pastel-y, but everything still feels like it has weight and movement and feeling to it. It's just it's a masterpiece of animation.
Yeah, when I was talking to some of my coworkers when we were doing all the research for this, and I was talking about like how crazy this art style and everything was. Like I was just like the work and the care and all of this stuff. And my supervisor actually spoke up and said, "Oh, one of my I think it was her cousin.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was her cousin who was got something in a grab bag." She was like it was an original cell from
Oh,
Snow White.
that's the dream.
And I was like, how do you get that in a grab bag?
I
Like
know, right?
that's just like I was like the fact that you don't know what you have, like
Mhm.
that's crazy. Cuz
Yeah.
that's like those things are not reproduced like
No.
super often. Um yeah, like I again, like I can't speak so much to the animation and the art style of it because like
Mhm.
visual art is not really like my personal thing, but I remember seeing where the later Disney movies would get
Mm.
references, like because the
Mm.
opening shot of the castle coming through the woods felt very much like the opening to Beauty and the Beast,
Yes.
which was, it wasn't the beginning of the Disney Renaissance, but it was definitely like the second.
It was around the second film. It
It
was
was
the
around
second
the
film.
second film of the Disney Renaissance, so I'm thinking like they were definitely going back into the archives and being like,
Like
what,
where our roots.
where are our roots and what made those originals, like your Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, what
Mm.
made those so magical
Mm.
and so special. Um I had a lot of like general thoughts. Like one of the main things was like a lot of the musical theater elements of
Mm.
Snow White. And Snow White came out in 1937, and technically like book musicals, and by book musical I mean a musical that everything that is a part of it, the singing and the dancing, is plot driven and story relevant. Because pre 1943, when I believe when Oklahoma came out, most musicals were just reviews. They would just kind of throw a bunch of songs together and there wasn't really story. Didn't really exist. And everyone credits Oklahoma with being the first book musical, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma. But Snow White was the one who did it first, and people don't tend to mention that. It did get mentioned in the documentary, which I was kind of pleased about, especially because Oklahoma is so in the American zeitgeist as that first one. But when you get like the quintessential Princess I Want song
Mm.
with I'm Wishing, and One Song, which I think is one of the best Disney love duets, because
Mm.
also the voices are so pure. Like I commented on this when we watched
Yeah.
it. I was like, I love the prince's voice. The vowels and how open his
It's very clear.
his sound is so good. Like it's I love, and the prince again shows up twice.
Mm.
But in the two times it is done, and we'll get to this later, like the two times he does show up, I think it's done very powerfully and very
Mm.
well. Um what other things kind of like stuck out to you? Because for me it was the music, for me, like, and some of the characterization aspects.
Um, I mean, for me, I mean, it's a lot of like just general movements, and I know a lot of it is rotoscoping, but everything felt like it had weight. And that's an issue I have with a lot of animation nowadays, where a lot of things don't feel like they have weight. And it's very, very difficult to portray weight in a 2D drawing. But everything there felt like it had weight. The dwarves felt fleshy. Like
Mm,
they're very stylized, but like when they rub their nose, you can feel like that's how you would feel like when you rub your nose. That's how it look that how it looks is how it feels.
yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. How it looks is how it feels.
Mm. And a lot of other animated movies took a lot of things from that, like because like Ghibli has like a lot of the similar kind of like it looks how it feels, and I think Snow White might have been like the first kind of originator of that.
I was thinking of Ghibli as well when you
Yeah.
said that. Yeah, I was, because
Mhm.
Ghibli feels just feels real in like a
Mhm.
very heightened way.
Yes.
And I think that's definitely what Snow White
Mm.
captured, cuz even like watching like the dwarves tiptoe
Mhm.
into the house,
Yes.
um it feels, and it's stylized. It's like
Mhm.
really over exaggerated, but it still feels natural to me.
Yes.
Like
Mm.
it's truly like your body recognizes it
They feel
almost.
squishy. They
Yeah.
feel squishy. Um, the other thing is like you get something like the woods scene, the very very iconic chase through the woods, where she's terrified and she's just running. She's just running, 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 and that's like horrifying as a child. And it just you were saying it perfectly captures like that feeling as a child of being lost as a child.
Lost, and
Mhm.
also how things look in the dark versus how they look in the daytime, because I feel
Mm.
like there's a big theme in children's media of like, especially like, well, at least children's media when I was growing up, because I don't watch much children's media
Yeah.
now, but of the things look so scary when
Mhm.
it's dark, but when the morning comes up, you realize like, oh, that scary thing in the corner was like my coat,
Yes.
or like that creepy thing on my toy box was just like a stuffed animal that I remember it was there.
Yeah.
And I think the wood scene where she's going through and the trees look so scary, and it looks like they have faces and there's claws and like all these animals glowing eyes look so scary, and then like the sun comes up and she was like, oh, like this is all,
Just the woods.
it's just the woods.
Yeah.
And I think that again that speaks to such a quintessential child feeling.
Mm. Well, it's also has to do with her character because she's a very very gentle character. She's extremely she's sensitive, but I wouldn't necessarily say fragile.
Mhm.
Um, because like she does talk to animals. She's very very sweet on the animals, but it's mostly because they're her only friends. She's in a very very bad situation. And then when she goes into the dwarf's house, because we were talking about this, because a lot of people, there's a lot of discussion about Snow White doesn't really have like a personality, but she does. It's just very very sweet and very very gentle, and she's also extremely hardworking.
I never
Mhm.
got blank slate from her, and I feel like
Yes.
everybody claims she's a blank slate. And I was like, no, I see. And we don't spend a lot of time with her. The movie's very short. So
Hmm.
when people are like, "Oh, she's got nothing there." I was like, I don't think there's so many instances you can get a lot from
Hmm.
her. Like it's I pick up you pick up on manipulation from her.
Hmm.
She has little manipulative tactics, the way she kind of speaks with the dwarves. It's motherly, which is,
Hmm.
of its time.
Like motherly trying to get you to eat your vegetables.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that very thing, but she knows how to she's not, I wouldn't really call her that passive.
No.
Granted, like a lot of stuff just happens to her.
Hmm.
Um but it's also like I don't think that that's very, like, I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, especially at least in the context of the 1937, and we'll get into the 2025 in a second. But I I felt, and I said to you at the end,
Hmm.
because the biggest critique of this movie is the love story. Like, everyone critiques the love story. They're like, he stalks her.
Hmm.
And I was like, I don't think he does. Because we meet the prince obviously during one song, I'm Wishing.
Yeah.
They sing a little duet together. She kind of runs away, like, bashfully.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's more, I got,
Bashful.
yeah, I know.
Uh,
I thought I got the sense more that, not that she was afraid of him, but that she's not really supposed to be talking to
yeah.
people. Because she's very much kept
Hmm.
cooped up and everything, and they sing a little song together. They clearly like each other.
Hmm.
Um, and she's obviously still thinking about him because she sings "Someday My Prince
Yeah.
Will Come." And at the end, for some reason, I thought the prince maybe, and maybe I was mistaking it with Sleeping Beauty. I thought the
Hmm.
prince maybe had a little bit more of an active role before he reappears. He
No.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Um, he appears after Snow White has bit the apple and died. Spoilers for a like 70-year-old movie. But she she's in the glass coffin and everything, and yes, that is a little strange. Like,
Mhm.
that is a little strange, but also you have to take into mind, it's like it's a fairy tale. Like,
It is a fairy
there
tale.
are
Yeah.
fantastical elements to it, and to me, in my mind, I think it was a wake.
And it's
um
also like the dwarves made that coffin for her because
they loved
they
her.
loved her. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, so when the prince reappears, I didn't remember this, but he reprises one song.
Mm.
And he sings, like, I have one song that my heart is singing. And they mention, because there is a little storybook bit before he reappears where they say he's been searching far and wide. And you can kind of infer he met her,
Mhm.
he probably went back to find her and see her again, and she wasn't
She's
there.
gone. Yeah.
And he doesn't know where she went. And they say, like, he was searching far and wide. And I'm like, okay. And then news of the woman in the glass coffin gets to him, and he's thinking, oh no, is that her?
Yes.
So the kiss to wake her up, like, I never saw, as, I'm just like, first of all, it's chaste as
Mhm. Yeah.
um I was like, that was a kiss goodbye. And that made, like, the moment so much more heartbreaking to me, even
Mm.
though I didn't find myself maybe connecting to these characters as hard as I would maybe something like in a 2-hour movie where
Yeah.
it's like a little bit more modernized storytelling. But I was like, I was like, he's in two scenes and they connected it
Mhm.
beautifully.
And also like the body language he has when he kisses her, because he kisses her very chastely on the lips, and then he like kind of like puts his forehead on her shoulder and is basically just like it's very much a goodbye.
It
It's a goodbye.
it feels like a morning, like
Yeah.
when you go to a coffin. Like, when you
Yeah.
go up to a coffin and say goodbye to somebody.
Yeah.
Like, that's truly what it felt like. It felt like, like,
Mhm.
awake.
Yeah.
And that's why, so when the movie ended and I said to you, I was like, I feel like this movie's parts get criticized and it never gets criticized in context.
Yes.
So that was my big that was kind of my big thing with this. So I was like, I'm very curious about Snow White and
Yeah.
the new one.
Mm.
And we went into it, I really really tried to kind of go in neutrally, and trying to go in just look like this is
Mm.
a movie, not Disney Snow White. It's a movie I'm
Yeah.
going to see, and maybe I'll like it and maybe I won't.
Unfortunately, I have more trouble doing that just because I deeply adore just the art of animation, and I have such deep respect for animators themselves that I have such an aversion to these kind of live action remakes coming out that like I will just anytime I go see a live action remake, I will always go in slightly negatively. Did my best and tried to kind of approach it as it is, but I it was hard, it was difficult for me to sit through knowing that it was based on Disney's Snow White.
Hmm.
Okay, so we are going to break this down into categories just to kind of keep our thoughts a little more organized. We have 5 categories that we're kind of judging things on. That's gonna be your characters, our story, our costuming and character design, our music, and just the general aesthetic vibe of it all.
Okay. So we're gonna start with characters.
Characters.
So let's start. I think we should probably keep the dwarves as like it their own entity. Like the dwarves are a group. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dwarves are one character, I
Mhm.
think. So let's
Dwarves are okay. Dwarves are kind of like two. Sorry,
so like just like in
because
terms of
Dopey's kind of his own
yeah,
thing.
we'll
Yeah.
talk about that in a second. So I think we'll
Mhm.
start with the lady herself,
Oh, Miss Snow.
Miss Snow White.
Mm,
Um okay, I can so let me speak to the live action Snow White. So obviously we talked about like I said I didn't really get blank slate from
mm,
animated Snow White. From here on out, just for like clarity's sake, we'll call them 37 and 25.
mm,
So it'll be like 37 Snow White or 25 Snow White,
mm.
just to keep things straight rather
Or
than
animated in live action.
yeah, whatever's faster.
Yeah.
So again, like I never got blank slate from animated Snow White.
Mm,
She has a personality. She is a passive heroine. So,
mm,
like, yes, I do agree that we are going to run into some story problems,
mm,
which we'll get into the next section. Rachel Zegler is Snow White, and I tend to casting to me is like a really fun exercise. Um, I don't mind Rachel Zegler as Snow White, mostly because I do love her voice. She's got that nightingale lark quality
mm,
to her voice. So when they were like, she's Snow White, I was like, I can see it. It was the same reason why I thought Halle Bailey made a good Ariel.
mm.
I was like, the voice, the eyes, the face,
Yeah.
everything looks and sounds right to me.
And I don't have too much familiarity with Rachel Zegler. The only thing I've seen her in is Hunger Games, which she was fantastic in. Loved her in Hunger Games.
Mhm.
Um, I'm like gun to my head if I had to pick like a actress to cast as Snow White, Rachel pretty much fits perfectly in there. Like
She fits the bill.
she fits the bill.
So yeah, I have no issue with her casting at all. Like I was again like I was like she's got that
Mm,
nightingale lark quality, and I got to see her in West Side
yeah.
Story as well, and she had that there.
Mm,
I think the only thing I haven't seen her in is Y2K and the second Shazam. I think those are the only two projects I have
mm,
not seen her in. Everything I have seen her in, she's singing,
yeah.
and she's great.
Yeah.
She's freaking
She's
great.
got a great voice.
I love her. I love her voice. It's so pure and so clear, and I love her in
Mm,
everything. I wish she could have a success that isn't marred by some weird thing.
yeah.
Um, her live action Snow White's characterization to me feels very confused
Mm.
because animated Snow White is a passive heroine, which worked in the story that was being told then. And
Her motivation in the animated was basically to just get out of a bad situation. Like obviously we have the someday my prince will come, but that's more of just like her saying like someday my prince will come and he'll take me away from my shitty abusive stepmother.
yeah,
Um
and I mean, she's not doing anything towards that goal.
no, not
I
really.
will like say
I'll
that.
concede that. I will concede.
So in this one, obviously there is no prince that she's wishing for.
Mhm.
Um I get the sense of here's what I think they were trying to do. I got the sense of and I think it's the same issue that Jasmine had in the live action Aladdin, which is this I want to be a diplomat,
Mhm.
but I keep being silenced. Or in Snow White's case, they kept sort of hinting at that like she's timid, or that she was holding back. And I never really got that
Me
sense,
either.
because there just wasn't a lot of scenes where it was demonstrated. It
Mm.
felt like all of it was very internal, and I feel like 90% of the heavy lifting for that particular arc was done by Waiting on a Wish, which is probably the best song in it.
Mm.
We'll get to music later, but Waiting on a Wish to me like depicts such a nuanced female experience of like I have a lot of power inside me. I don't know how to wield it.
Mm.
And is this like a part of me? Am I hiding this? Is this something that's never going to get a chance to do anything? You see a little bit with her in The Evil Queen where she
Mm.
tries to say like, "Hey, maybe don't be awful." And that's about the extent of her trying to do something.
My biggest issue with the characterization of Snow White in the live action versus the animated is that she's a lot less industrious in the live action. Um, because if you watch the animated again, she gets into the dwarf's house. She's just like, "Oh my god, it's so dirty in here. It looks like it's made for children. Oh my god, where's their mother? Oh my god, they don't have a mother."
Mm.
And then she's like, "We'll clean this up. We'll clean this up." She cleans it up, goes take a nap, and basically just like, "I will cook and clean and do all this stuff if you let me stay here so I can be away from my evil stepmother." In the live action, and this ticked me off with this particular characterization of her, is that she is led to the cottage by the animals, and then she just takes a nap. And for me, it was like, where's the very iconic, cleaning scene? The very iconic cleaning scene from Snow White. And it doesn't come in until a lot later and for a very, very different reason, which I think fell even more flat for me. And there's a lot of people who will argue that, like, well, women don't have to just be reduced to cleaning. And I'm just like, I will make the argument that Snow White's cleaning is just basically her trying to use her skills to get out of a bad situation. Those are her skills, like it or not. And that was my issue with one of my major issues with the live action.
Yeah, and I again I also had that thing too where I was just like you we also talked about like she wants to be a diplomat and
Mhm.
you said that instead of having her do because they do play up the fact that she's basically a maid in her own house in a
Yeah.
very like Cinderella-esque kind of way.
Mhm.
But then we don't see her using those skills outside of it and they try to bring her in to be more of a diplomat
Mhm.
with the dwarves. They do try to like demonstrate that and it stops being motherly and turns more into
Therapy.
not even like therapy. I felt more like it's like she becomes their manager.
For me, it felt like therapy. It felt like group therapy.
Hmm.
As someone who's been to group therapy multiple times, um, it felt like she's basically trying to specifically reconcile Dopey with the dwarves. And I actually had another thought. We'll talk about the dwarves later. Um, but she comes across as just being their therapist rather than like, because in Snow White 37, she's very motherly to them. And this doesn't come across as motherly. This comes across as her being a therapist, and not even her being a diplomat, just comes across as her giving away free emotional labor. But I don't know. She just the other thing that kind of just sucked is that Rachel Zegler's an amazing actress. I don't think the script was giving her much to work with.
Yeah, there was that was a big part of it for me as
Mhm.
well. Um yeah, I got a very confused characterization of Snow
Mhm.
White, especially when other characters, and we can go into other characters. Other characters I think were doing more of the heavy lifting and trying to tell you who she was than she did.
There was a lot of telling and not a lot of showing.
Yes. Because so let's like use that as a segue then. Moving on to the Evil Queen.
Yeah. The Evil Queen is one of my favorite villains of the Disney canon because she serves. She is that bitch. Her and Maleficent are like those bitches. Um, I did not like Gal Gadot's casting. Because the Queen has a very, very distinctive face, and Gal Gadot just does not have that face. It's
For you.
for me.
Yeah.
She doesn't have because the Queen has very high cheekbones, very dramatic eyes, the iconic red lips. And Gal Gadot is just she has a more rounded face and her makeup was done very muted. Not her eyes were dark, but like the lipstick was not the iconic like queen lipstick. They also do not get her like iconic purple dress and stuff in until later on and it's in
Yeah,
sequence.
we'll go into that like because
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about costuming as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Evil Queen in her relation to Snow White, the Evil Queen
Mhm.
is she was also confusing to me because she presents almost the thesis of the film.
Mhm.
Because there is a conversation she has with Snow White where Snow White does approach her and say, "Hey, the kingdom needs a little bit of kindness, a bit of grace. Maybe we should feed them." Like
Mhm.
maybe they should have food.
Well, let them eat cake.
Yeah. Um, and she would use this I wouldn't call it an analogy,
Mhm.
but she would just kind of do a little demonstration where she would be like little metaphor where she would pull out a rose and she'd be like, "Oh, it's beautiful, it's gentle, it's lovely to look at." And then she would burn it in her hand essentially and say like, "But look, it's fragile. It at the tiniest bit of, pressure or pain, it'll just completely fall apart." And then she'll say like, "They want a diamond. They want something hard and indestructible and like a jewel." And I was like, it is nice that they use those two symbols because it is, I think, flowers and gems are
Mhm.
like big like flowers, apples, gems are like very
Mhm.
much like symbols of the Snow White film.
Yeah.
Like those are things you can associate. And she presents that twice.
Yes.
And it's sort of being like, Snow White's too gentle, she's too passive, she's too passive. And I was like, okay, we're getting the criticism of Snow
Mhm.
White 37 in the narrative of Snow White
Yes.
25.
The oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The other when I first saw the metaphor, I was actually picking up on a different metaphor because I was trying to figure out what the evil queen's motivations were
Mm.
besides just she's the evil queen. And when she's just like Rose, fragile, dies. Diamond doesn't die. I'm like, is she like are they pulling like the evil queen wants youth? The evil queen like will be immortal and live for like that's what I was wondering.
That was the other thing
Yeah.
too, because Evil Queen, when she do, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And I knew that they were going to change the term fair, and they were going to use fair in terms of diplomacy rather than
Mm.
fair in terms of beauty. And it's interesting because I loved that the mirror would clarify himself every
Mhm.
single time. He was like, "Look, you're pretty, but Snow White like
She's
possesses
nice.
like a good
Yeah.
personality, and she's pretty,
Yeah.
so
She kind of wins.
wins." And like that was a very obvious lesson to
Mhm.
me, and he does state it in plain words
Yeah.
towards the end. Um, so that was the other thing too. Like I was like, because the evil queen's thing is vanity. That was always her thing.
Mhm.
So I'm very confused over where the jealousy comes from. Like
Yeah.
I felt like we could have gone deeper with her, and we
For
didn't.
all the explaining we do in this movie, because there's a lot of explaining going on, trying to give backstory to like her kingdom, the dwarves, everything. We never get a backstory for the queen. It's just she showed up one day, married the king, and that's that.
Yeah, because even like I remember like back like when Snow White the Huntsman came
Mhm.
out, there was a bit more of a clear motivation for that
Mhm.
situation. Like I do remember they were like very just
That was more of like a, I want to kill Snow White to have her youth kind of thing, which I thought they might have gone in this direction,
well
but
killing the dad was basically like you got the sense she's like, "I want power."
yeah,
In the first movie.
yeah,
It's like, "I want power." And I was like, I would have even taken that. Like it's
yeah.
simpler, but like I understand it.
Mhm.
It's not it just yeah. Yeah, the evil queen I found very confusing, and we'll get into some other stuff with her later when we get into other parts of it.
Yeah.
Moving on, moving right along.
Should we talk about the prince or
Let's
not the prince?
let's talk about Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Love Jonathan.
I did not like Jonathan.
I mean, okay,
Yeah,
I like Jonathan as a character. I think he was unnecessary, but I like Jonathan in
yeah.
general.
I mean, okay, yeah, he's an entertaining character. He's an entertaining character. I will give you that. The issue I have with him is he's entertaining because Flynn Rider is also entertaining.
He was a poor man's Flynn Rider. I will
Yeah.
give them that.
He was even like wearing like green, and Flynn Rider like has like the teal.
Yeah. We do stan
We
I stan Jonathan a little
you
bit.
stand Jonathan.
He's also a Broadway guy, so I got to give them props for
Yeah,
like hiring a Broadway guy.
he was
He's
attractive.
currently in Othello on Broadway if you want to shell out $900 for tickets.
Mm.
He's around. So we love Jonathan. But anyways,
Mm. If we're talking about Jonathan, I gotta talk about Florian though,
let's
because the issue I think that Jonathan was trying to solve is that they still need a love interest to do the true love's kiss,
Mhm.
but they don't want to have the prince. And that was the problem they were trying to solve because the prince makes in some criticism circles makes Snow White seem weak because all she's waiting for is the prince. However, I make the argument that Florian is not a character. Florian as in the prince in Snow White. is not a character, he is an aspiration and an ideal. Again, I said this earlier, but Snow White doesn't necessarily want a prince, she wants to get out of a bad situation. Her saying like someday my prince will come is because he will take me away and take me to his castle, and then I won't have to deal with this anymore.
Mm.
And so he doesn't need to have a specific characterization. He just needs to be an aspiration. Whereas Jonathan just kind of like, it's like they needed to like make a love story and they didn't know how to do it besides just everyone loves Flynn Rider.
Everybody loves
Everyone
Flynn.
loves Flynn Rider, and like a thief really fits into our themes about like, you know, oppression and community and stuff in here.
That was the other thing
Yeah.
about them, because Flynn Rider, as a character, we love Flynn Rider.
Mm.
Flynn Rider has the character arc of he's the bad guy out for himself, and now he's the good guy. And they attempted to do that with Jonathan as well, even though he was never painted as the bad guy
And he was
at
never
all.
painted as out for himself either.
He was painted as like a resistance fighter.
Yeah. He was snarky, but like
He was snarky, and he has a song I hate, which we'll talk about later. But like the fact that he has a little line where he says to himself, "Ooh, finally, I'm gonna try and be the good guy." I was like, you never were the bad guy.
no, and you even like were setting yourself. You're like, we fight in the name of the king, like the good king.
The good king, her father.
Yeah.
So
why does that make you the bad guy?
it doesn't.
It doesn't make sense.
Again, Jonathan confused me. I love him. He was great. Hate his song. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's.
He does get a good duet with Snow White.
He does get a good duet with Snow White. I do agree with that.
Mhm.
If we're gonna talk about Jonathan, we have to talk about the seven. So I think we could talk about the
Yes.
seven dwarves and the seven thieves, because this was something that was so. First of all, the controversy leading up to this movie centered around the seven anythings because it changed multiple times.
Yes.
I do think. I don't know if it was as much of a we're doing this, just kidding, we're not doing this. I do think there was some miscommunication because the first photos that came from set were of the seven thieves, but we did not know that at the time. Everybody was like, oh no, they're gonna do like seven magical gender non-conforming creatures.
It's woke now.
It's woke now, all that stuff. And I was like, okay. And then they're like, no, just kidding, we're doing the dwarves. So then we get a an idea of like what exactly was going down. And I do think, again, I think it was a mix of communication. I do think there may have been a bit of retconning in the writer's room. I All right, let's talk about the seven dwarves and the 37 first. Just
Can I do this?
Give me a little palate cleanser, please.
Can I do this?
Yes.
Okay. I do not like the dwarves.
No, in the 37. We're
Oh, in
talking
the 37? Okay, we're talking about 37. I love the dwarves in the 37. So the dwarves in the 37. The thing about the dwarves in the 37 is that they all look very, very similar. So they had to differentiate them by basically character traits. And they actually had like an entire page of just a list of different like character names they can give them. Most of them ending in Y. There were some really weird ones in there. I wish I'd written them down.
It's all in the documentary.
It's all in the documentary.
We're gonna put, by the way, we're gonna put all of our resources in the show notes.
Yes.
So anything we used for research, Wikipedia, anything that we have gathered, we are going to put in the show notes.
Please watch the documentary though. It gives a lot of insight into like how Disney got really started in that animated film kind of business, and it's so good. Anyways. So, the dwarves on 37, basically, they are kind of like their own characters, and they're also, if Snow White's a love story, and the human characters are very human, the dwarves are your Mickey Mouse. Because this is their first full-length animated feature, and they're coming off of just a shit ton of shorts. And they know comedy. The movie was actually originally started when they're like, we need to be able to like get gags in here. They actually started basically just going to the studio and basically like, give us every single gag you have. I don't care if it's dumb. We will pay you to give us just ideas for just gags we can do.
You got paid more if it was used. And that was typical for when they were designing shorts. That was the business.
Yeah. And so a lot of the dwarf-centric scenes feel like Mickey Mouse shorts. In that general like comedy sense of it. Like when they first return home from the mines, it's like a 5-minute sequence where they're trying to convince themselves to go upstairs just to go see her. And then they have my least favorite scene in the original Snow White is the hand washing scene, though I do admit that some people could rewatch that. Basically, Snow White sends out the dwarves for hand washing. They sing a little song and wash their hands, but Grumpy won't wash, and so they, just don't come in the tub. It's very cute. Just slows down the pacing a bit for the movie, but it was their first one, and I wonder if that would have like killed in a 37 theater.
We
Yeah.
did talk about this where like I was kind of wondering like what jokes a 1937 audience would laugh at
Yeah.
and what a 2025 audience would laugh at.
Yes.
Because there are moments where when the dwarves discover that the house has been cleaned,
Mhm.
it's funny to us because it's absurd that they're discovering things that are clean and they think it's weird.
Yeah.
Whereas at the time, I wonder if they would like have found it funny for the same reason. I
Mm.
wonder if they would have found it funny that things were clean at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I feel like just because like of what the
Mhm.
gender roles were at the time, I just think
Mhm.
I wonder if like those jokes hit different. I
Yeah.
don't know. But yeah, like, and the dwarves actually, interestingly enough, specifically Doc
Mhm.
surprised me because we've seen the dwarves get taken out of context a lot. They'll
Mhm.
get put in like in a House of Mouse situation,
Or
or
they'll get put on t-shirts.
put on t-shirts, things like that.
Grumpy.
And Grumpy specifically,
Yeah.
yes, because he has probably the strongest personality. But it was interesting with Doc because Doc gets portrayed as the smart one,
Mhm.
and the running gag with him was he kept switching his words around.
He couldn't find the right words
He
for
couldn't find
things.
the right words for things, and I was like, I don't recall this being like something I remembered about his character. And it's because whenever the dwarves are taken out of context and used in
Mhm.
maybe like an advertising sense or House of Mouse or some kind of
Mhm.
voiceover or whatever, turn into stock
Mhm.
characters, and you did have to do that at the time. But like Doc gets painted as the smart one, and I was like, I don't
He's
remember
very
him being. I
scatterbrained.
was like, I feel like we're not portraying him correctly.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing with like Dopey, because Dopey gets a major characterization change in 2025. In the original, you get the sense that like maybe he's a little picked on, but it's more that because like he looks like a baby. Like they're all like old men with these beards. He looks like a baby. Like you know how like there's that joke of like 6-year-olds stacking on top of each other and just going into like trench coats and trying to get into R-rated movies? He feels like that. He feels like a baby trying to, be very adult.
Mm.
And there's a little like, ribbing and stuff going on. But it's not any more ribbing than it would be like if you had a newbie at work.
Or like, and they feel like brothers.
Yeah.
They're brothers.
Yeah.
Like, and so getting into the dwarves characterization in the 2025, so my one of the things I wrote down while I was watching it was I actually felt better when they were not on screen because
Yes.
I actually found scenes with them, and I don't know if it's just because it was on a large
Mm-hmm.
screen. I found scenes with them pretty overstimulating. When they're all arguing and
Mm-hmm.
talking over each other, I had a hard time. And I don't and it could have been the animation, which the animation was giving Polar Express,
Yes.
which in 2025 is not passable.
No.
Um
We'll talk more about that in character design.
yeah, I remember because our mom went with us. So I remember saying to her, I said I was like when they were singing and like coordinated, I felt a little better, but the second Snow White left their house, I felt so much better
Yeah.
after the second she went into the woods and like
For the
because
second time.
for the second time because she does not spend much time with the dwarves in the house
In the house,
in
which makes me so sad. But
which was
because the set's gorgeous.
we'll talk again. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that in a sec. But it's never have I felt such relief to like see no CGI
Mhm.
on screen because we did go from like heavily done up, the animals as well,
Mhm.
because the animals were featured heavily with the dwarves as well. When she walked into the woods and there was no CGI to be found, I felt better. It felt like
Yeah.
getting off like a ride.
Mhm.
It just you just felt calmer, and they did the characterizations kind of like the stock dwarf
Yeah.
characterizations with the exception of Dopey, which I will let you take away.
Okay. So Dopey. So again, in the original, Dopey was basically a baby. In this one, they make him out to be like he's disabled, and they're picking on him because he's disabled. And personally, I'm always a fan of like when a character has a character that can't speak because I love seeing how they would communicate without speaking. And Dopey is basically mute for the majority of the film. Um, and basically Snow White's like, can you not? Basically, when Snow White's doing her therapy session, because basically they pick on him. Well, actually, there's one thing that I remembered that does not fit in with the characterization of them in 2025. because in 2020, 1937, in 1937, the dwarves basically like go into the bedroom to find Snow White sleeping under the blankets. They think she's a monster, and so they run out. Dopey doesn't make it in time, and they shut the door in his face. And they're basically just like, you're fine, just go do it, just go do it. You're fine, just go see what it is." Dopey sees, and yeah, all
Dopey screams
Dopey screams.
in
He
the
does.
1937, so he does have a voice.
Yes.
He just doesn't use it.
And then in the 2025, kind of the same scene plays out where they're like, they go in, they see that there's someone in there, they kind of escape, they send Dopey in, but they're concerned for him.
Mm.
So this isn't like they actually have concern, they have a heart for him. And then we go down to breakfast the next morning. Cabin still isn't clean. I'm gonna say that every single time, but we go down to breakfast the next morning and they're like ribbing on him, but like in a bullying tone, not in like good-natured brothers, coworkers kind of way. He runs off and he's upset, and so Snow White goes out and basically
I do want to point out,
yeah,
because there is a little background moment
yeah,
where when Snow White is kind of noticing that he is being picked on,
Mhm.
they're chatting in the background, and they
Mhm.
do say, "Well, we don't call him Dopey because he's actually dopey. Like we just
Yeah,
call
no, I
like it was
remember that.
really weird. I was like, do you
Is like, are you trying to stick this landing about being nice to disabled people, or
what do you
not?
mean?"
Not? And so then we go outside, and she asks Toby, just like, "Do you not speak because you can't speak?" And he's just like, "That's not it," shaking his head. And she's like, "Are you scared to speak?" And he's like,
Yes.
"Yes, that's it." And so then we launch into, well, why don't you whistle? And then we do whistle while you work,
Work.
which is the cleaning session that basically is a therapy session of them trying to,
Yeah, she
get
teach
along.
she Whistle While You Work has turned into a teach a man to fish moment,
Yeah,
where instead of her just doing the job to
yeah.
earn her keep, she's like, I'm gonna show y'all how to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
And yeah, so the dwarves.
Yeah.
So we
And then Dopey speaks. And then Dopey speaks. Later in the film,
yes,
which
Dopey
is
is also the narrator.
yeah, he's also shown as extremely intelligent. Not extremely, but he's not the baby anymore.
No. All right, moving on from we could talk about the dwarves for
Forever.
hours.
Yeah.
And I think everything that's been said has been said by
Mhm.
other people as well. So let's talk about the seven thieves. Because the seven thieves, I think, got robbed of school.
The thieves got robbed.
I didn't even
Don't
think of it.
explain the joke. Don't
I
explain
did
the joke.
I did not even think of it when I was saying it.
Uh,
But
Continue.
I think so the seven thieves are Jonathan's friends.
Mm.
This is the gang he runs with. These are the thieves that
Mm.
steal in the name of the king, and it's a very Robin Hood situation.
Yeah.
Um
And they have an
it,
actual little person.
there's an actual little person, which I think making that little person interact with the CGI dwarves was a little cruel. I also did learn today
Mhm.
actually that the voice of Grumpy is done by a little person. He spent
Mm.
6 months on that movie and he didn't even get to play the part
Yeah.
like on screen. So that was a little, and then all
Mm.
the rest of the dwarves were voiced by um a lot of Broadway men. I
Mhm.
can't remember them all off the top of my head,
Do you
but
know
I
who Dopey was?
Dopey was Andrew Barth Feldman. He is known for Dear Evan Hansen. He also played Linguini in the Ratatouille musical. um,
Oh, in the Ratatouille musical.
yes,
Okay.
I'm not gonna badmouth any of the cast because actually it was a really great cast.
They did good with what they were given.
Yes, I have to.
Unfortunately, they weren't just given much.
They weren't given much. Also another shout out because we won't cover them. The person who plays the king,
Mhm.
Snow White's father, who gets
Oh,
like
he was great.
it's Hadley Fraser. We love Hadley
Yeah.
Fraser. He's Raoul in the 25th anniversary Phantom of the Opera. Go watch it.
Mhm.
Heard of it? Fantastic. But moving into like the Seven Thieves, they all had names and personalities that I feel like we never got a
We got
chance.
two names, I think.
We got two names that they never introduced themselves properly, if I
Mhm.
remember correctly.
Most part, they were silent.
Yeah, and there was an arc involving the little person character where I forget what his name was, but he kept saying, "I am this, the
Master of the Crossbow.
master of the crossbow," except all he has is a slingshot, and that's the joke.
Yeah.
And at the end, when there's a big fight sequence, he
Mhm.
gets to finally use a crossbow, and he uses it well. And I
Mhm.
was like, that feels very unearned because
He
I
also
know.
has a crush on one of the other thieves.
Yes, he does. He has a crush on one of the other thieves, which just
Mhm.
serves as a segue to talk about the fact that Snow White's into Jonathan.
Yeah.
So I I felt very deprived
Mhm.
of these characters that I felt like could have
They
been
were wonderful.
more interesting. I I I honestly would have loved a Snow White and the Seven Thieves. I think that would have been really cool.
They were probably my favorite characters in the entire movie.
With like how little, even with how
Even with how
little.
little screen time there was. And and it's definitely because no one else was going to take that slot.
Well, and I remember because Snow White leaves the dwarves,
Mhm.
and when they came on screen, I was like, oh, maybe we did like the
Mhm.
dwarves for maybe a little fan service nostalgia moment. We got to do Whistle While You
Yeah.
Walk. We got to see the house. We got to see, and I was like, maybe it's a bait and switch, and really we are going to see the Seven Thieves for the rest of this film because we're about halfway through by the
Mm.
time we meet them.
Yes.
And yeah, we don't see a lot of them. I truly feel I was robbed. I was robbed of the Seven Thieves. They were
Mhm.
robbed of screen time. I
Mm.
think they hired like good people and like they just got
They all looked different. They had great costumes.
mm,
They looked so distinct, and I really, really liked that. I was missing kind of like a good colorful fantasy
mm.
kind of aesthetic, and they nailed it the whole way.
Okay, so talking about like colorful fantasy, let's go
Mhm.
into story. Um very confused story because going along with like the fact that like Snow White's characterization was also very confused. I could not figure out what the arc was supposed to be.
Me either.
I yeah, and I
They go multiple directions with her and never really complete either of them
they
satisfactorily.
do the Disney live action thing of like introducing a lot of themes and then going nowhere with them.
Yeah. A lot of anti-capitalist lip service.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of, like the only thing that seemed to stick was that gentleness versus hardness
Yeah.
dichotomy. Because they seemed to really want to laud Snow White for her gentle nature. Because there is a moment at the
Mm.
end where they do offer her a chance to commit violence.
Mm.
And it would have solved the problem.
Mm.
And she doesn't. And I knew that they couldn't let her because
I would have wanted her to.
but I knew that they couldn't let her. I was
Mm.
like, that would completely ruin
Her
Snow White
character.
as a character anyway. That would have been a total character
Yeah.
assassination, like literally.
I think we're gonna have to kill this guy, Snow White.
But so I understand, like, she's like, kindness is the way to go.
Mm.
Um,
The issue I
yeah.
oh sorry,
Go ahead.
the issue I have with this is that other than that one moment in the climax, she's never given any other options where it's like violence could be an option here. She's never given the actual choice to choose between violence or gentleness until the very
I
end.
feel like if you saw her continue to make that choice
Yeah.
over and over again, because sure, her motivation seems to rest on how her family raised her. Because
Mhm.
she talks about, like, I want to be my father's daughter. That comes up in Waiting on a Wish multiple
They have
times.
an opening song that's kind of like
That's about
about
that.
that,
Good
yeah.
things grow.
Mm.
Which I also liked as
That
a
was actually that was
criticism of her.
decent.
But yeah, like the parents raised her. She's like, you're kind, you're fair, you're true, you're brave, like
Mhm.
all these things. And again, like I feel like she never comes up against any conflict that forces her to be otherwise or forces her to choose to be otherwise or choose to stick to her morals.
Yeah.
We never get any of that. And like Jonathan tries to confront her with her passiveness and it falls flat.
Cuz the way he's tackling it is through the perspective of she's royalty. When when they first meet, she's a scullery maid. He doesn't know she's royalty. And then he has an entire song that's basically just like, well, you're royalty, so of course you wouldn't know this. And I walked out of the theater during that song
Yeah,
for
you
briefly.
you you stepped out.
Yeah, I couldn't stand it. Um, but he he doesn't approach it versus a thing where it's like you're too passive and you need to like snap out of it.
He
He
comes
pr-
at it from
he
privilege.
comes at it from privilege when it is extremely clear to both him and her that she has had none.
Yeah. It's again very confusing.
Mhm.
Again it's that thing of other characters are telling us who she is rather than her.
Mm,
And I get that if you're trying to do the everyone tells me who I am, I get to choose who I am.
mm,
If that was the story you were telling,
mm.
fine.
Everyone's like, she's so nice and gentle, and then she just kills the queen, right?
No. I mean, maybe
That'd be a very different story, a very fun story, but a different one.
maybe not that,
Yeah.
but yeah. But there were like certain things where like because again, like certain instances violence could have been the answer.
Mhm,
And it makes me question her as a ruler just a little bit
mhm.
when I'm just like, well, there are instances where maybe you will have to go to war.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to make hard decisions
Mhm.
other than just like taking care of your kingdom or whatever.
Yeah.
Um yeah, the story was very I found very confusing and again like the fairest of them all kind of thing because what would you say the moral of 1937 was?
Um, Abused children should be able to kill their
No.
abusers. Um, Sorry, it wasn't the abused child got to kill her abuser. It was the abused child's friends should be allowed to kill their friends' abusers.
Well, they didn't
Um,
even they don't even kill her because we talked
mhm.
about this.
Yeah,
The queen's death is an act of God in the
yeah,
original. Nobody kills anyone.
yeah.
And
Um,
this is Hayes Code era, so
yeah.
you know, like she has to be punished.
The
But
the I mean the original one, it's basically just like be kind and good things will come to you.
mm,
Be kind and good and kind to others. Like Snow White earns her keep. She doesn't just like barge in, take a nap, and just be like, I live here now. She's just like, no, I cleaned your house. I'm gonna make you food. Just let me stay here.
yeah, it's
Mhm,
that's it. I think that was like my big
mhm,
issue. Is like I was like I don't understand what you're trying to tell me
mhm,
because it's all very confused.
mm.
And like even the queen dies dies. I don't
In
even
a
does she die?
fucking
I don't
weird
know.
way.
It was she gets dusted like it's Endgame. But
Yeah, by the mirror.
by the mirror, she gets sucked into the
Which
mirror.
we think the power comes from the
The
mirror.
mirror. There wasn't a lot of explanation of the queen. I was like, if you're
Mhm,
gonna over explain some stuff, please explain to me why the queen is here and how
mhm.
come she's magical and nobody else is.
Yeah.
Actually, that was the other thing. Going back to the dwarves for a hot
Mhm.
second, the dwarves were magical, and that didn't come into
Yeah,
play
they
at
talk
all.
about like, oh, there's something in our palms that will like tell us whether something's like cool or not.
I actually was fully expecting a climactic scene in the mines,
Oh, the mines were gorgeous. We'll
and
talk about that later, but the mines were
we
gorgeous.
never got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the story goes, I don't know what was going on.
I the thing that sticks out to me the most is that there's one plot thread where basically like the evil queen in this one doesn't kill her father, she sends the father off to war. And the father's like, I'll be back, I'll be back, I'll be back, I'm just going off to war. Snow White becomes a maid, and then
I'm
she
just going off to war.
I'm just going off to war. I'm going out to get milk. Uh
That's like the fairy tale version of going out for cigarettes.
yeah. Um but yeah, and Snow White's basically just like, we'll find my father, like he'll know what to do, he'll like take her off the throne. And then like this is like a continual thread where basically she's like, that's seems like her motivation.
She's like, I want to find the truth about my dad.
I want to find the truth about my dad because like my dad's at war, my dad's at war, my dad's at war. And then like the queen comes and it's like, your dad's dead. And I'm like, well, obviously.
Well, no, it wasn't.
Mhm,
He's at war. She was told like he perished. He never came home. And then there's I forget what
mhm,
gives her the thought, but she's given. Oh, I think the huntsman, when he lets her
mhm.
go, says she lies about everything. You might want to look into the truth about your dad. And in my mind, I was like, he's probably still dead. He was just murdered, not like
Yeah.
killed. And that is kind of what happens. But that's her motivation the whole time. She's like, I gotta find the truth about my father.
And that never really goes anywhere.
Eventually, she just finds out, like, oh no, he's really dead.
Yeah. That- but it never really it doesn't really affect her story too much. They could have killed him off like right at that point, not had that line be said, and it wouldn't have changed the story at all.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's again, like with the characterization, I'm so confused. I'm confused about the story. I don't know what it's trying to tell us. What are you expanding upon from the original?
They're not it doesn't feel like they're expanding on anything. It feels like they're taking all this criticism that's been levied at basically Snow White over the past few years by a bunch of people who don't know what they're talking about. um and then also like peppering in some like, well, here's some criticisms people have had about government for like the past several years.
Yeah, like in trying to modernize it and things like
Yeah.
listen, I am all for political messaging
Yeah.
in art in film. Like I think that
All art is
all
political.
art is political all art is political, but I'm just like if you're gonna say something, please be clear in what you're
Yeah.
saying. Um
They did have a very, very clear metaphor at one point where basically Jonathan gets locked up with the huntsman. And they're both in these big heavy chains, and Jonathan keeps tugging at the chain trying to pull it off the wall. And the huntsman's like, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work. And then Jonathan's like, well, if you help me, then it might work. So the huntsman gets up and they pull the chain off and whoop de doo.
There
And
is
that like
a
that's very on the nose, but
there's a very much like a collectivist
yeah.
message, which I do think they do stick the landing on.
Mm.
So let's go into like as the collective. Let's talk about costuming and character design.
Can I talk about the dwarves?
Yes.
Bad, bad, bad. Like they did the best with what they could. They did the best with what they could. I get nauseous looking at them because I described the dwarves in 37 as fleshy, but like in a good way. Like it feels like how you would feel like if you had that kind of flesh. These guys feel fleshy as in you look at them and you know how it would feel, and it's sweaty. And it's just Dopey's the worst. Dopey looks like, you know how like you see like a mixed breed of dog and then you look at their eyes and they're human eyes? That's what he looks like. Like it's unnerving. It is unnerving. Oh god, they make me not like physically
See,
nauseous.
there was I did notice, I mean, at very least they tried to differentiate them in facial features, and then once they put
Mm-hmm.
the cast up, like when I saw the credits
Mm-hmm.
and I saw who was playing who, I was like, "Oh, now I see it." Because
Yeah.
they were putting the actors' faces very much in
Mm.
the characterization of and the design. I again, like it made you nauseous, it made me overstimulated. I had a hard time. I had
Yeah.
a hard time.
And thing is like I was trying to like when you first see them they're in the mines and they're doing hi ho. Which I
Still
will get
slaps.
into hi ho later.
Hi
Oh,
ho still slaps
I know,
every
but what
time.
they did to it.
Oh,
Um
they butchered
but
it.
when they're in the mines, I'm like, okay, well they're in the CGI environment, they're CGI things, and thing is, I love a bad Christmas movie, so like I'm like I can vibe with this in the bad Christmas movie, and then Dopey did the very iconic scene where he has the two diamonds in his eyes, and I was like, cut the cameras. Like I know I'm like no nope, like I was kind of on the fence, and you have put me firmly over to the other side. But it's just, and the thing is like considering they all have such distinct designs now, you didn't really need to go the route where they all are like happy, bashful, doc, like because you could differentiate them better because they have such distinct designs, whereas the 37s are very, very similar to each other. And you need to differentiate them through body language and through name. But these guys, it's like you didn't I don't feel like it was necessary. They also have no this is a big issue I have with a lot of CGI characters is that they have no weight to them. They feel like they have no weight to them. They feel like they just kind of glide across anything they touch, and it's just unnerving. And you can see it especially in Whistle While They Work when they're trying to dance with Snow White because it feels like they're not moving like she has weight to her. Her clothes have weight. Not as much as she would like, but like we'll get into her costume later. Um but the dwarves just feel like they're gliding. They
Mm.
don't feel like they're touching. And that's again, CGI is very, very difficult. And from what I know, they were on very much a time crunch to try to get these specific dwarves out, this specific iteration, because they went through multiple iterations. Um, so like they did their best with what they could do, and CGI is very, very hard, and they're not unionized. Um, so like I give them props for doing what they could do, but it hits squarely in the uncanny valley. They are just not, especially like her trying to interact with them and any of like the realistic characters trying to interact with them, the Seven Thieves, Jonathan, any of them, it does not settle. It's just they're unnerving. Dopey is the worst.
Um, yeah, if you mentioned like Snow White's costume. Let's talk about Snow White's costume because Snow White has three costumes in
Mm,
the entire film. We get her I actually don't mind her costume where when she's a scullery maid.
don't mind that at all. That was good.
I think that was well designed and it's in line with the rest of
Mm,
the townsfolk.
mm.
Like it definitely kind of makes her a woman of the people kind of thing.
Because they were dressed very, very colorful, very, very warm colors, and she still has the very colorful, warm colors.
In the scullery maid
Yeah.
outfit. Yes, she's the great thing they did about the townsfolk is that in the early song Good Things Grow, when you get to see what the kingdom was like pre-queen, they have them in those primary colors that Snow White's costume has. It's like the same color scheme. Um and then once the queen does take over power and everything, those colors get quite muted. And I think
That was great,
that
yeah.
was a great choice.
I'm also a color theory nerd and just great use of color.
So, and then I want to talk about, before we talk about her main costume, I do want to talk about her end costume, which I actually thought was pretty well made. The end costumes, everything's completely in
Mhm.
white. Um, all the townsfolk, everything, Jonathan, all of them are in white, and Snow White's her white costume looks more historically accurate to whatever time period they were trying
Mhm.
to portray than like her main costume. Let's get into the main costume. So, Snow White,
She has this very iconic costume in the original with the blue bodice
mhm.
and those cut sleeves, and then the giant high neck, and then the yellow skirt. And when you watch the movie itself, that yellow skirt has significant weight. It is like a heavy silk, or like you've talked about, like you think it's a heavy velvet. Um, it
Well,
has
when you go to like the Disney parks, like
yes,
that walk around
Mhm.
costume that she wears is velvet.
Yeah, and like when she moves, you can see how it moves, and it has weight. Like it's like if you took a heavy blanket.
Mhm.
Almost, it feels like that's what it looks like moving. They put 2025 Snow White in Tool.
Yeah, this was the thing, because so actually when they first put her in the dress, there is blue. I don't even know what to call it because I'm not a costuming person, but like
Mhm,
she has more blue
mhm,
over the yellow,
mhm,
and then when she goes through the scene with the woods,
mhm.
it gets ripped away.
Yeah.
And I remember looking because like when we hit the morning part where
Mhm,
she's speaking to the animals, um, and she's sitting there in that dress, and the way the light was reflecting through it,
mhm,
I was like running my eyes over
mhm,
that skirt looking for some rips, because like I just knew, I'm just like, there's no way this thing would be intact
mhm,
after that much time. And it was weird because when she was doing the more fantastical stuff, when she's with the dwarves, when she's in that fairy tale
mhm,
house, when she's doing like it looked okay. And like I said, I felt calm when she went back into the woods and there was no
mhm.
CGI. I felt calm, but then I also felt uneasy again because she looked weird.
She looks like
It looked like a Party City
it
costume.
looks like a Party City costume. I liked the bodice. I felt like the
The
bodice was
bodice was
fine.
fine.
It's the s- it's the skirt. It's the skirt. It just needed to be a different fabric if they wanted to do like that kind of flouncy Tool kind of thing. Put something over it. Just put something over it, and then you can still have like the flounciness princess kind of dress, but you still get like the heavy weight of the the skirt that it was in the original. It's also like it takes me out of it because I'm like, was Tool even like a big thing back in medieval time? Like, could they make it like in that kind of amount?
There's something about
Hmm.
Tool that like if it's not done well, sometimes it can look really cheap.
This one looked cheap.
It felt very much like I could go to the Disney store and buy that Snow White outfit.
Yeah, which
And
is
like you
not
don't
something you want to feel with a
with
movie costume.
yeah, with a movie, by the way, that budget was $205 million. Like you don't
Jesus.
want to feel that when the budget's that high.
Mhm.
Now granted, probably most of it went to the CGI,
Oh God.
but yeah, like I really struggled with her costume. The thieves had real simple costumes.
Thieves looked great.
I thought they were great. Did see someone complain
Mhm.
about Jonathan's. I'm gonna include Jonathan in the thieves
Yeah.
in this case, because Jonathan doesn't really change
Mhm.
clothes. I did see someone complain about his weird little hoodie jacket thing.
It's fine.
Obviously, it's fine.
It's
Again,
fine.
like we talk about like time and place and like time period. Like it's you sometimes do have to do like it's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
It's I get like you can
Mhm.
see the influence of what they're trying to do, but like it's a fairy tale.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't upset me too much. I liked their costumes. I really liked the thieves. I think the thieves were very well designed and very well costumed. Very well cast too. Like they're probably the highlight of the movie.
Mm. Let's talk about the queen because there were things I liked and things I
Mm.
hated. Um,
I already mentioned I wasn't a huge fan of the Queen's makeup, and I also just don't think Gal Gadot's face in particular was great for this role. Um, the costumes, like some of them hit, and then some of them didn't.
yeah,
Because she had like this stained glass thing going
I
on with the
liked the
crown, which was nice. Yeah.
glass motif. That was probably my favorite thing because I loved the stained glass crown. There was also a cape she wears at some point that looked like shattered glass.
Yes.
Loved that. I thought those were
Mhm.
great choices. And then they would clash with whatever dress they put her in.
Yes.
The dress would just look cheap because there was one, and
I can't even remember what dress she's wearing. They all meld together for
they
me.
did all kind of mold together. Like the cape and the
Mhm,
crown were like kind of the best things, and she
mhm,
doesn't wear much jewelry,
mhm.
so it was. those there were things where I'm just like, we were kind of on the right track, but not
Mhm.
really. And I get that she has like that,
Mhm.
like the animation, there's not much
Yeah.
to
To
be interpreted.
yeah.
Um, but the one that stuck out to me was the one during her song, which was
Yes.
Sequin.
That and thing is that was the one that was supposed to mimic the iconic like purple dress, black cape, and it was
It
sequins
was Sequins.
of all things, and that drove me insane. It drove me insane, especially because the Evil Queen has such an iconic design, and while they did do some cool things like the stained glass and stuff, the fact that they took that dress and were just like, let's just put in sequins. I think they thought it was camp. It just looked tacky.
Yeah, that was the that was the thing about like the Evil Queen in general
Mhm.
was that they I don't see Gal Gadot as someone who can do camp.
She's very serious.
That's like
Mhm.
I don't want camp for the Evil Queen. I want like Shakespeare. I want Royal
I
Shakespeare
want
Company.
drama.
I want Royal Shakespeare Company
Yeah.
for like that. If we're gonna go campy, I would want a different
The
actress.
issue is that I think the issue is that like the Evil Queen's very iconic for like drag roles as well.
Yeah.
So like I think they were trying to like harken back to like a lot of the Disney villains do are very iconic drag roles as well. Um and so like just being like, well, if we do camp, like kind of, like how a drag queen would do camp, like maybe that's a good shout out to like that community, and it just did not work. That's my theory anyways. Um I didn't personally like Gal Gadot's voice in the song, but we'll go into music later.
Yeah, well, I mean, we covered costumes for pretty much all the major characters.
Yeah.
So we could go into music now if we want to.
Mm,
I have to say my highlights were Waiting on a Wish, Good Things Grow.
mm.
I liked this rendition of Whistle While You Work because I like Rachel Zegler's voice.
Oh, that was
Um,
very, very good.
very good. I don't like that we didn't get any kind of even homage to Someday My Prince Will Come or in my
Yes.
song, especially because of how iconic those songs are in the Disney canon.
Mm,
The fact that like when Snow White came out in 1937,
mm.
because movies were not distributed in the home, you had to distribute the soundtrack. Like that
They
was
had to be iconic.
they had to be. Because they were like, yeah, we can't watch the movie over and over again, but
Mm.
like the kids can like listen to the record and
Yeah.
see it in their mind. Like
Mm,
that was like a big part of Disney's marketing.
yeah.
And I was kind of like, because even like in Beauty and the
Mm,
Beast, like when we found out the new Beauty and the Beast was not going to include any songs from the Broadway show, we still got home as a motif
yes.
in the score. It
Mm,
was still incorporated somehow. Or even something like Wicked, which is like being tied to something that is
mm.
so iconic, like The Wizard of Oz. The fact that a motif in that score is an interpolation of
Somewhere over the rainbow.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So like I'm just like even just paying a little bit, and maybe I haven't looked close enough at some of the theory of the
Mm,
music. Maybe it is hidden in there and
mm.
I just haven't noticed, but I I'm it did feel like something was missing.
Yeah, that was my biggest issue with the music because I did like Waiting on a Wish.
Mhm.
The issue is that I didn't like how because Snow White's music is so iconic and so of its time that I'm just like this new Snow White music. Even though there were songs I liked, Snow White and Jonathan's duet. That was very, very
See, to
pretty.
me that was a little forgettable, not gonna lie.
Um,
I can't remember it really.
to be honest, the most memorables for me were fucking Waiting on a Wish. I shouldn't say fucking on that one. That was a good song. Um, I will say fucking on fucking Princess Problems because the only reason I remember that is because I remember the opening notes and then I left the theater.
Yeah, Princess Problems, I hated that it existed at all because I'm sick of in the new princess movies where we constantly have to have the we're subverting the trope conversation, or in this case we have an entire song.
When we've been doing this kind of thing for the past 10, 15 years.
We've been doing this. It's like sometimes I'm just like you can subvert a trope without constantly telling us you're doing it.
Yeah.
And you're not even doing it well
Yeah.
at this point. Yeah, Princess Problems and both of the Queen's songs.
Bad. Yeah, I
I
did not
really
like
did not like
those.
those.
I didn't like her voice in it. I don't know if Gal Gadot has any like formal
I don't
training.
know much about her singing
Yeah.
training. And that was the thing, and this was the thing too,
Mhm.
because I'm like, the Queen doesn't sing in the original one, and that's kind of part of it.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the characterization is having her sing would almost like
Well, there's a lot of the Disney villain song didn't really become a thing until like the 70s, 80s. And then now it feels like they're trying to go back and fix that by giving the Evil Queen a song because like she's such an iconic villain, she needs a song. And I'm just like she didn't need a song though. She didn't need a song.
because those villains like to me Maleficent, Lady Tremaine, Evil
Mhm.
Queen, they have that quiet stoic stillness.
They're intimidating.
They're intimidating. Adding the song
It,
takes
it
that away.
it's almost like they're revealing their hand.
Yes. Because in musical theater, the song is used to look inside of a
Mhm.
character. These are their inner thoughts, this is their views on
Mhm.
life. And the fact that we know so little about the Evil Queen, and again, like in a movie that explained so much and explained nothing about the Evil Queen, doing a song, which by the way, didn't help. Like it
Mhm.
didn't help. Like it's not even like revealing her hand, but it just feels like it
It's
takes
a
away from
retread.
it's a retread and it also takes away from her power. Like the second like she started singing, I was like, I'm not scared of you.
No.
Whereas like if you watch like and I keep for some reason keep
Mhm.
thinking of Scar from Lion King. I
Mhm.
keep thinking of Be Prepared. The
Yeah.
imagery of that and the Mad King aspect of
Mhm.
that fits for him.
Yeah.
Frollo it fits even though
Hellfire is so
even though
good.
he's a similar stoic
Poor Unfortunate Souls.
Poor Unfortunate Souls fits for Ursula.
Jafar doesn't really have a song either.
Jafar gets a little bit of a
Oh,
song
he
at
gets a
the end.
little of a song towards the end. He gets like a reprise of something.
Yes. But those to me feel like campy villains, with the exception of Frollo.
Yeah.
It fits them better
Mhm.
with these main three female
Mhm.
villains. The song I feel like undermines their power.
Yeah. We want them to be like in the background. We don't want them to be.
We want them looming scary in the
Yeah.
background.
And the thing is, female villains don't usually get to be looming scary in the background.
Mm. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the music. There wasn't much music in it. I wouldn't
I
say there was a ton of songs.
do want to say one last note. Hi ho.
Oh
So
yes,
basically,
yes.
they included two of the original songs, and they were "Whistle While You Work," which was fine. That was good.
Hmm.
Um, dwarves were in it. That's a negative, but that's besides the point. Um, "Hi Ho" is a very, very iconic song. It is very short in the original movie. It's very short. It's maybe like a verse and a chorus. Like it's very short. They made it out to be like it was probably had to be like 4 minutes at least.
It felt very
It
long,
felt very long, and
and they
basically
added words.
the reason that they built it out so long was because they were trying to give you dwarf backstory and like telling you these are all the dwarves' names. Like they'll be like, "Oh, because I sneeze a lot." Like I'm sneezy, and they're like, "We know," and I'm like, "You don't need to tell us who they are if you just let them be themselves."
Yeah,
Like you didn't have to tell us Sneezy was Sneezy. I mean, Snow White's basically just like, "Oh, you must be Sneezy because all the beds are labeled." But that's after we've already spent time with the dwarves and we can kind of guess who they are.
and also I have to wonder with some of these movies, like how much are they banking on people knowing what it is going in? How much like how much are they relying on in terms of story for us to kind of come in with some background
Mm,
knowledge? Cuz like the dwarves, I feel like even if you don't watch, if you let's say like you're a little kid in
mm.
nowadays and have not seen Snow White, I feel like you might know the dwarves just because of their prevalence in the parks. If you're like a Disney kid, like
You know the
you
dwarves.
know the dwarves even if you don't know them in context.
Mm.
So this was kind of weird for me where I was like, why are we explaining this? Also, like this fairy tale not as like well known now? Like, do people really need reminding? Like,
Yeah, like I don't even think the Snow White's like not that well known. I mean, even still, like even if still, if a character again, if they had kept in the scene where she looks at the beds and they're like, she's like, oh, these are weird names for children, and then we get to meet the dwarves, and Sneezy is sneezing, and Bashful is embarrassed, and Grumpy is angry, and all that kind of stuff, we would be able to know like these are who they are. These are
mhm.
who they are. Those are their beds.
There's a lot of telling not showing.
Yes, a
I
lot of
get that.
telling not showing, which really sucks also because the dwarves also introduce themselves, I think at least 4 separate times
They do.
in the movie.
Yeah.
It
And
becomes like a running joke, and I'm like, it doesn't need to be a joke though. Like this isn't funny. It's not funny.
And it's so funny because we said we're like the dwarfs introduce themselves like 4 times, and the thieves get
Nothing.
nothing.
Nothing. We don't even we know two of their names, I think.
And I don't even remember them because they say them once.
Yeah, twice. One of them gets twice, and the other one
Yeah,
gets once.
yeah. It's
Hmm.
it's a little it's again it's a lot of confusion. It's a lot of why are we doing this? It's a lot of you're telling me stuff that I already know, but when I need exposition, you're not giving me any.
Mm.
Um, there was
The dwarves get like exact ages, which is
yeah,
weird.
that was new. I was like,
Yeah.
why is that relevant?
Mm.
Why is that relevant?
Because I'm just like, is it something like maybe the evil queen is? Because she talks about like she loves jewels and stuff like that. So I'm like, or is she like enslaving them? Is there like,
I genuinely thought there was going to be a connection there.
yeah, and there was none. There was none.
There was none. I have no idea. And like it was weird because like
Hmm.
she talks about jewels and then I was like, "Oh, and then they mine and they do stuff." And I was like, I was like this again is very pointless. I would love to know the economic layout of
Yeah,
this kingdom. Like how does
because
this
it
work?
seems like farming, and then you have this one mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like I was like if you want to make it make sense, like
Hmm.
can you just like if you feel like, because it's a stupid fairy tale and you have to make it run on some kind of logic, can you give us some logic?
You could have done something like the dwarves control the mines, and so like the queen used to pay them or something like that to give her
Yeah, it was
the money, and that gives her a reason also to go after the dwarves for housing Snow White because they're supposed to be under her control.
see, yeah,
There's so much you could have done.
there's so much we could have done. All right.
General. Let's land on a lighter note. General
Generalist, yeah.
aesthetics, not out like outside of just costuming and their characterization stuff like that. Sets and the CGI for the sets, gorgeous,
Yeah,
absolutely gorgeous.
lovely. And I've seen a lot of behind the
Mhm.
scenes stuff just like Rachel Zegler's been posting like so much stuff recently because of
Mhm.
release week. So I've been seeing a lot of behind the scenes photos. A lot of the dwarf household stuff
Mhm.
is practical.
And I could tell, and I loved it.
And it's great.
That's why I was so disappointed we did not spend enough time in
Yeah.
their house. Because when they return to the dwarves' house with the seven thieves, and now we have seven thieves, seven dwarves, Jonathan, Snow White, it's a big party. They don't go back inside the house.
No, it's in the front yard.
It's all in the front yard. And I'm like, this was really a missed opportunity. And I wonder if it was budget and like they had to reshoot stuff, so they just kept it outside.
I don't know. And it again, like I do remember
Mhm.
feeling like a nice like like
Mhm.
feeling when I saw because if you look at the pictures
Mhm.
or this like the animation cells of that house in the original
They
1937,
are gorgeous.
the little details, the way the steps look, how everything is carved, that all got transferred in
Mhm.
live action. Like when you talk
And
about
it's colorful.
it was colorful.
Yeah.
And when you talk about making something live action
Mhm.
and you want to like bring an animation to life, this was probably the best example of that.
Oh, I could
It was like one
10
to
out of
one.
10. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like that they did perfect job. Castle sets were also great.
Hmm.
Castle sets. I also really, really loved the mines. The mines were
And those
gorgeous.
were CGI.
Those
Those
were
weren't real.
CGI. And like I'm a gamer, and so like if there was an open world game that just had like a section of the game set in that mine, I would spend hours just exploring. It's glittering and gorgeous, and they have all these different like
It did feel like the
mine
ride.
carts and stuff like that. It was wonderful.
It did feel like the ride, like
Um
when you go on the ride.
yeah,
It felt real in that way.
it was wonderful. I loved I loved the mines. I think they did a fantastic job on those. The animals were also very cute when they were not interacting with Snow White. They were very stylized, which was an interesting choice for a movie that's trying to be a live action. Like the animals' eyes were bigger, the proportions were a little, cuter and stuff like that. And then when they interact with Snow White, it goes into the uncanny valley.
Mm.
Um, which really, really sucks because there's actually with the storybook, the animals like open the storybook, which is very, very cute. And then at the end they close it and there's a little hedgehog and he rocks back and forth and he waves at it's very cute. It's very cute.
Yeah, like on their own, they're adorable.
Yeah, and then like they interact with Snow White and it's just like that's not like you suddenly get taken back out of it. Like that's
You're like,
not a
that's not a
real
deer. That's
that's
not a
not a
real
real
deer. That's
yeah.
not a real rabbit.
Yeah. Which really sucks because the animals in Snow White 37 are also very stylized compared to the very realistic humans, but they feel natural in that environment. Um, it's just it's unfortunate because they were very, very cute. They were very cute.
Yeah.
Um, I did wonder if like maybe that because there was something with the deer where I'm just like if that's gonna be the spirit of her dead mom, I'm gonna like lose my shit.
Yeah,
Um,
there was a doe that kept showing up that she
yeah,
would like hang out with a lot, and then when Jonathan finds her,
it's the doe and the stag.
there's a stag behind him,
Mm,
and I was like, is this symbolism? I
yeah,
don't know. Like that meme of the guy with the butterfly. Is this symbolism?
so, yeah.
Um yeah, I was wondering about that. Actually, let's talk really quick. I know we're onto aesthetics now, but going back to story. The True Love's kiss
Mm,
sequence was placed, and this is obviously like such a big moment
yeah,
in the story.
it's the
It's
climax.
the climax, and it happens in the original 1937. He kisses her. Like, by the way, the queen is taken care of at
Yeah,
this point.
she's dead.
The very last thing that happens in this movie is he kisses her, she wakes up, they go home to his castle. That
Mhm.
is literally the last thing that happens. In this film, they switch those things around. He kisses her, and then you get this weird feeling of, oh, everything's solved, but wait a second.
Yes,
We have other things to
we
do.
have like another 20 minutes.
It was really weird.
It was in a weird spot, and I think it's like I know how I would have done it. Particularly, I'm not saying it's like a better version of it, but this is just how I would have done it. I'm just like, if you really wanted to do this kind of True Love's Kiss thing and still wanted to be like a twist on Snow White, make Jonathan have the apple, and she has to go to the castle and kiss him awake after she's taken like the queen out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like that would have made a little bit.
If you wanted to
That would
subvert a
be more
trope,
interesting. Yeah,
there's your trope.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that was a very strange thing.
Actually, going back even further, the apple scene was very contrived.
Yeah, the apple scene thing, I did write down like the convincing her to take the apple had to get smarter because the lot
Which was I liked that.
yeah, she does like
Mhm.
the evil queen in this case when she is the witch, she does create a sense of legitimacy
Mhm.
because she's like, I know that your boyfriend was captured. I have this thing that you gave. She gave him a necklace from her.
Mhm.
And she shows Snow White the necklace and is like, I have proof. This is
Mhm.
like she creates legitimacy the way a scammer would.
Yeah.
Which she's like, I can help you. I
Yeah.
know for a fact this happened.
And Snow White at this point, she's also trying to move out and try to find the truth about her dad.
Mhm.
So she's already packing and stuff, and she's trying to pack up food and
She's
all this
packing food to for a journey.
for a journey. And so she goes out, and this lady's just like, "Hey, I know your boyfriend's in trouble. Um, I can't really do much for you. Have an apple for the road."
Hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, well, in like a normal person scenario, she would be like, okay, cool, take the apple with her, put it in her food stuff, and then
And leave.
leave. And in this one, she just kind of like looks her dead in the eye and like takes a bite of it.
Yeah, because this was
Mhm.
interesting because she's in there. She answers the
Mhm.
door. She gives like your
Mhm.
boyfriend's in trouble. Snow leaves the
Mhm.
house and starts heading in the direction of the castle to go get Jonathan.
Leaves her food.
Leaves the food.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Here, take an apple for the road." That's my only in
Mhm.
my mind. That is the only explanation as to why she wouldn't have just like take like,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't understand why we didn't do the wishing apple thing because
Yeah.
she'd be like, "But I can solve your problems. Here, have this apple.
It's a wishing apple.
It's a wishing apple."
Like if you eat it, like he can be safe. And that would make sense for her to eat it in front of the witch because you'd be like, okay, this is the quickest way to like get this problem solved. This is just like have an apple for the road. She could have eaten it at any point between
Yeah,
the cottage and the castle.
I was like, it got smart, then it got stupid. Like,
Yeah, and also like I'm wondering if maybe it was just like they meant it in the script to be like, oh, she's under some sort of enchantment where she feels compelled to eat it. But I'm like, I never really got that sense. I was only like after when I was thinking about it, like I'm like, was that the angle they were trying to go for? They also in the original film they don't show Snow White's body until she's like dead and in the coffin.
yeah.
Like they don't show her fall to the ground. They also in the 37 they describe how she dies. They're like your blood's gonna congeal and that's gonna make your breath stop. And like that's gross.
In the movie or
In
in the
37? Yeah, in 37 they do.
did I miss
You
that?
missed that.
I
Yeah.
must have missed that
She's
detail.
like your blood's gonna congeal because she says it multiple times like the blood's gonna congeal, your breath will stop. Um and so then they don't show her body as she falls. In this movie, they show her body as it falls, but they don't explain like the I don't remember them explaining the actual like what the sleeping death does.
Yeah.
Because the sleeping death in the 37 is like this feels like a coma.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think there was a little better explanation. So when she is creating the apple and everything, which by the way, that whole sequence they think they butchered because That's iconic. I was like, if you were gonna do a shot for shot, that's the one you want to do
Yeah.
because the apple going into the poison and coming out with the skull, that is iconic imagery. Um,
Instead,
but
they did like a shriveled apple that is then like the going into the poison
it was
shrivels it.
underwhelming.
Yeah.
I found that whole sequence very
She does
underwhelming.
get the Gal Gadot does get the iconic cape scene where
She
she's
does get
going down the stairs and she has to do the cape,
the cape thing.
but she doesn't have like a specific lab. The
No, she doesn't.
37 had a specific lab, and you got the sense that like she is well read, she is well learned, she is like worked for getting like all this evil shit. This one is just more like she has magic powers and she can just like she has like a little table of potions and she just
It's literally like her makeup box that
yeah.
like collapses and it's got some tinctures in it.
Yeah, and it's just like I'm like it's underwhelming.
It was an underwhelming sequence, especially because
Mhm.
like that sequence used to freak me out as a kid.
Oh my god, yeah, the turning into the hag.
Yeah, the hair, the white hair, like all
Yeah.
that stuff, like crazy. And yeah, that whole sequence was a bit underwhelming. The one thing I will give her props for again, like when I say like the con gets smarter, but then it gets kind of stupid, is the fact that she does read in the book like, oh, the cure for the sleeping death is true love's kiss. So she's like, I'm just gonna make sure her boyfriend's locked up.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, at least you covered your bases.
Yeah.
Because at least in the 37, it's I don't think she knows that Snow White has like a boyfriend.
She no, she does cuz she sees them in the
She
garden.
does, that's
She
right.
sees
Okay.
them in the garden.
But yeah, he's kind of an afterthought
Mhm.
in the
Yeah.
37. Where in the newer one, she's like, I gotta make sure he's taken care of before I
Yeah.
go do my thing. So I'm like, okay, I was like, I'll give you props for covering your
Mm.
bases.
But yeah, it's it just it sucks to see like very very iconic scenes that they just kind of fumble.
Hmm.
I also just want to say going back to aesthetics. We have these very fantastical woods. The two things to say about the woods. First of all, the scene of her, the very iconic scene of her running through the woods and being very, very frightened, not scary. Not scary. Not scary in the 25. Like, it's just, it feels like she's on a, it feels like she's on a soundstage. And just, like, looking around and running and not, like, interacting with the environment. And then they just do a bunch of weird lighting and CGI to try and make it look like, oh, she's scared. Whereas in the 37, that feels like she gets her dress torn. She falls through. Like, she feels like she's getting hurt.
Mm.
Um, and the scene is just not scary in 2025. And I get that they were trying to make it more like fantastical, but then it loses the again the very iconic feeling as a child of this is exactly what it feels like to be terrified and lost as a child. Um, and then the other thing I had to say about the woods is that when she does leave the dwarf's house, she is in realistic woods right after that.
Yeah, that was really
It felt
confusing to
very
me.
Hunger Games.
It did feel very Hunger Games because I remember being again like I felt like again the relief of the dwarves, the
Mhm.
confusion about the dress, and then looking around and being like, why does this all of a sudden not feel like a magic movie anymore?
Yeah. Also, I would have really, really loved the dress get dirty. I would have
Yeah, we
loved the
were
dress get dirty.
discussing this because at the end when she I do like there was one thing that carried over from the 1937.
Mhm.
So we had that moral of be kind and kindness will be done unto you. Snow White gathers allies in the
Mhm.
1937. That is why she survives.
She
She
gathers the animals, who then get the dwarves, who then chase the queen, who then gets killed by God.
gets killed by God. Yeah. So it's I was like she gathers allies, that's her strength.
Mm.
And she does the same here because they do show her as a child gaining relationships with
Subjects.
her
She
subjects.
knows them by name.
She knows them by name, she knows their children, she knows their jobs.
Mhm.
And this is what saves her in the end. But there is a scene where she basically gathers at the gate of the castle with the entire town being like, get out, I'm taking my house back. And we said we thought it would be more powerful if maybe the dress got dirty.
If she was like, it was torn and ripped and ugly, and then she's faced with this fair and beautiful queen.
Yeah.
And like and then she looks like she fits more in with the townspeople because she's impeccable when she goes to see the townspeople.
Mm.
Snow White's impeccable. She also has a new cloak, which came from nowhere.
I know, we were like, where did this come from? Like,
Um,
we were like, she didn't even wear this, like, early on.
but I kept thinking of there's a horror movie called Ready or Not,
Right, yeah.
which is about a bride who basically then gets
But,
hunted down by the family she wedded into. It's a very fun movie. But the behind the scenes basically shows that they have several different versions of her wedding dress as it gets more destroyed over the course of the night. And I'm like, I would have loved if they had done something like that with Snow White. where like after the huntsman lets her go and she goes to the woods, then she gets like a more rumpled dress, and then she's cleaning it and she like maybe tears it a little bit while she's cleaning, and then they get confronted by knights in the woods with the thieves, and maybe she catches it on something else because there's also like this where she's trying to make the birds
Well, there
be a
yeah, there was a
decoy.
sequence where it seemed where she fools the knights into
Yeah,
thinking she's behind a tree because some birds like take some clothing that looks vaguely like hers and
yeah,
like makes it flutter. And I was like, "Oh, maybe she gets rid of the dress
yeah,
and then we're going to see her maybe in like thieves' clothes
yeah.
for the rest of it."
Which
That
would have been cool.
which would have been cool. And I thought it
I
was
would have
going to
also taken that.
I thought they were going to do a similar thing like the Beauty and the Beast
Mhm.
did where Belle is in like the petticoats for like the last third of the
Yeah,
movie. Like I thought it was going to be something like that.
yeah.
But yeah, we didn't get that.
I'm like it would have been wonderful if she had just, especially if like when she was walking up to the castle, it was very reminiscent of the scullery maid costume from the 37.
Yeah,
That would
that
have
would have
been
been cool.
wonderful.
Yeah, I would have
Um,
loved a callback.
yeah. It's just unfortunate. I feel like that was a missed opportunity. And maybe it was just because they wanted to keep the dress so iconic. Um, but I just feel like it was a missed opportunity to make her more cohesive with the plot and kind of show how they wanted her to grow.
Mm.
I wouldn't say how she grew because I can't really tell how.
Yeah, it's yeah. So overall, so I have a letterboxed.
Mhm.
So when I finished the movie, I believe I gave it like a 2 out of 5. How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to
1
5?
to 5, probably around the same area, and that is like generous. That's generous for me.
Like a 1.5 maybe.
The issue is that I would be a lot less harsh on this movie if it wasn't Disney's Snow White based on the animated film. Because if it wasn't Disney Snow White based on the animated film, I could be like, this is a great 6 out of 10 movie. Like, it's just a fun time. I'm gonna forget about it in a year. And then, like, 20 years later, I'm gonna be like, hey, you guys remember that movie that was like blah, blah, blah? Because this is it's based on such an iconic piece of animation history, I feel like I have to judge it more harshly for them essentially trying to make a replacement or like a side grade to the animated film that just comes out such a disjointed mess. If they had tried to do like their own thing, like again, got rid of the dwarves and just done the Seven Thieves, or like had her just be like had her kiss Jonathan awake instead of the prince. If they had actually like gone the distance and tried to like completely change the film and make it like so you want to see this one over the 37, I would be less harsh on it. Um, because like this the early live actions and stuff have very specific audiences. Because you have Alice in Wonderland, which is for the Hot Topic kids. Um, Sorcerer's Apprentice, which no one remembers but me, and I love that movie. It is not good. And then you get the live action Cinderella, which is like the first of the true remakes. But even with live action Cinderella, they're like it's Cinderella, but we're gonna dress it up a bit. But this is for like teenagers. You grew up with the film, like this is gonna be a little more dressed up for you. Snow White doesn't feel like that. It feels like they're trying to do all these different criticisms and critiques and just be like, okay, we fixed it now. And it doesn't come across. Again, if it had been like someone else's movie and it wasn't specifically Disney Snow White, I would be less harsh on it because at least like at least you were trying to do something, like tell something. This being from Disney, being like we're billing this alongside the animated movie, we're advertising it basically with the animated and then transitioning it into live action to almost like show you that this one's the better one. I don't like that. And that makes me judge this film a little harsher than I would otherwise, unfortunately. Just thinking about how all that interconnects. So I probably 2 out of 5, but still that's very generous. Maybe a 1.5.
Okay, so that was the very first episode of the Kill Your Normie podcast.
Bangers only.
Where can people find you, Ren?
So people can find me at 2amrainbow.bluesky.social on Blue Sky. I post my art there. Sometimes I yap about animation. Say hi. Come and say hi.
Yeah, for me, you can find me at Lindsey Taft Music pretty much everywhere, I think. Instagram, if you want to follow my music Tumblr, that's where that is.
Yeah.
and on YouTube as well. I have a channel. I've had a channel for a while now. The most recent video up there is me going to a supernatural convention. So if you're interested in that, that'll be on my channel. So we're going to very slowly start getting some social media channels for Kill Your Normie. We're currently in the process of setting that up. But please follow the Fangirl to My Core Substack, where this podcast originated.
Posting all updates on there.
Posting all updates on there. We are syncing with Spotify and with Apple Podcasts. We're gonna probably expand out fairly soon once I figure out how to do that. And we'll keep you guys updated with any other news and stuff regarding the podcast. But thank you so much for listening. We will see you again in 2 weeks.
Stay cool, guys.